Transmetimi është rregull? Okej. Atëherë po propozoj të fillojmë. Ju përshëndes gjithëve, faleminderit për pjesëmarrjen në këtë diskutim të sotëm. Mendojmë se është në kohë të duhur, e që kemi titulluar Keqinterpretimet e pavarësisë Kosovës, implikimet dhe përgjigjet. Ky debat fokusohet në kontekstin dhe reflektimet që mund të kenë tendencat e politikës zyrtare ruse për të krijuar analogji të paqena midis procesit të pavarësimit dhe shndërtimit të Kosovës dhe aneksimit dhunshëm të Krimes dhe disa rajoneve tjera të Ukrainës nga ana e Federatës Ruse. Më herët analogjitë ngjashme janë ngritur edhe nga zyrtarët e Serbisë dhe të Republikës Serbe në Bosnë e Hercegovinë, me qëllim të dezinformimit të opinionit ndërkombëtar, duke tentuar që të ngadalësojnë procesin e njohjeve ndërkombëtare dhe antarësimit të Kosovës në organizata ndërkombëtare. Mungesa e reagimeve serioze dhe të argumentuara institucionale, diplomatike si dhe të qarqeve akademike, intelektuale dhe të shoqërisë civile, mund të kenë ndikime negative në procesin e përmbylljes së shtetësisë Kosovës, si antare fuqiplotë e bashkisë ndërkombëtare dhe në dialogun për një marrëveshje gjithëpërfshirëse në njohje reciproke me Serbinë. Pra, siç e thash edhe në titull, ne përveç implikimeve kemë vendos në nën titull dhe edhe përgjigjet, pra çfarë përgjigjet do t'i japim ne këtij diskursi dhe narracioni që frymëzohet kryesisht nga Federata Ruse. Pa dashur të humb kohë, po e kaloj fjalën tek mysafirët e nderuar në panel. Për një fjalë rasti fillimisht zotin Mentoragani nga Kipret si bashkëorganizator të kësaj Tryezë. Zoti Agani, fjala për ju.
Faleminderit gjithëve. Do të dëshiroja që të jap veç disa pika kryesore hyrëse për lidhur me këtë Tryezë të rrumbullak. Së pari.
We cannot hear you really.
Mirë, po.
It's already a little bit better.
Po më dëgjoni tash, po?
This is a little better, but you must speak in the microphone, otherwise you get lost overseas.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you.
Okay. Të më thonë, disa pika kryesore, disa pika hyrëse lidhur me këtë Tryezë të rrumbullakët. Së pari, krahasimet që Rusia i bën me Kosovën janë krahasime të cilat janë përplot me keq interpretime dhe me keq informime. Përndryshe, origjinën e natyrës së këtyre keq interpretimeve dhe keq informimeve ne mund t'i gjurmojmë qysh në narrativat serbe në fillimet e luftës në ish Jugosllavi. Kush i ka kuptuar marifetet e dezinformimeve serbe të asaj kohe, në masën më të madhe e ka të qartë edhe natyrën e narrativave ruse për luftën në Ukrainë dhe të krahasimeve që Rusia i bën lidhur me Kosovën. Po e rikujtojmë për shembull zanafillën e luftrave në ish Jugosllavi. Tendenca e Serbisë ka qenë për të krijuar një shtet etnik serb në ish Jugosllavi dhe kjo fillon me krijimin e Republikës së Krajinës Serbe si dhe të Republikës Serbe. Krejt kjo është e njëjtë edhe me përpjekjet e Rusisë me për shembull Transnistrin në Moldavi, më pastaj me Osetin Jugore dhe Abkhazin në Gjergji dhe me aneksimin e Krimes së pari dhe tash të Luganskut dhe të Donetskut në Donbas të Ukrainës. Të gjitha këto janë domethënë vazhdimsi e parafërsisht të njëjtës ideologji shtetërore të Serbisë dhe të Rusisë. Si Rusia, një paralele tjetër tash, si Rusia që e konsideron Ukrainën si shtet të rrem, të njëjtën gjë e bën edhe Serbia ndaj Kosovës, dhe ironia më e madhe është që Rusia përpjekjet e veta për okupim me agresion ushtarak i justifikon me ndërhyrjen ushtarake të NATO-s në Kosovë, e që e ka pasur për qëllim shpëtimin e shqiptarëve të Kosovës nga shfarosja e jo okupimin e Kosovës. Mirë po deri më tash, këto krahasime përplot me keq interpretime dhe keq informime, e që arritën kulmin me keq interpretimin blatant të Putinit, të opinionit këshilldhënës të gjykatës ndërkombëtare të drejtësisë, nuk janë trajtuar në një mënyrë gjithëpërfshirëse, as nga autoritetet vendore dhe po ashtu as nga ato perëndimore. këto krahasime nuk kanë implikime vetëm për Kosovën dhe Ukrainën, por implikimet janë për rendin ndërkombëtar i cili është duke u ndrruar me shpejtësi të madhe pas agresionit rus në Ukrainë. Në këtë aspekt, një terren të lirë Rusisë i kanë dhënë edhe vendet mosnjohëse të Kosovës në Bashkimin Evropian, e të cilat me përjashtim të Greqisë, narrativat për pavarësinë e Kosovës i kanë pasur pothuaj të njëjta me ato të Rusisë. Kjo ndasi brenda perëndimit realisht e ka dobësuar pozicionin e perëndimit në përballjen me Rusinë, dobësi kjo që tashmë është evidente dhe që tregon se Ukraina nuk do të mund të mbrohet në mënyrë efektive nëse një pjesë e perëndimit e mohon shtetësinë e Kosovës. Këtu kemi të bëjmë, pra ajo që është fundamentale, këtu kemi të bëjmë me një përplasje të fuqishme midis vlerave liberal demokratike dhe atyre autoritare dhe diktatoriale në skenën ndërkombëtare. Kjo tryezë është një përpjekje nga ana jon për t'i trajtuar narrativat e sipërpërmendura, si dhe implikimet dhe përgjigjet që deri më tash kanë munguar ose kanë qenë të pamjaftueshme si nga Kosova, ashtu edhe nga një pjesë e perëndimit. Ju faleminderit.
Faleminderit shumë zoti Agani. Tani po I kaloj fjalën zotit Sedi Osmani, kryetari I bordit të Institutit Reinvest për një fjali hyrëse që thashë.
Lutsin, Lutsin, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, yes.
I haven't understood a word of what you all have been saying, and I think Ed left the thing anyway because he also didn't understand anything. It's all in Albanian.
So you didn't get translation, no?
No, zero.
Okay, just a second.
The tone is bad and the translation is not existent.
So we'll guide you right
And Ed has left.
now.
He didn't understand a word either.
Well, you know, you have a button down there.
Yeah, it says English, but it doesn't work. On my screen, it says 2 times.
1, 2, 1, 2. S'po I shkon për kthimi jam aty, s'kam çfarë më bë. Shko foljo aty ne spjegoja. Okej.
Now I have no tone.
Ed,
can you hear me?
Yes, Paul.
Yes, we can
Paul,
hear you.
yes.
Did you understand the Albanian?
Yes. If you're speaking,
there is a global.
yes. Yes.
No,
Yes. The answer is yes.
no English.
There is a globe over there. I think
They, interpreter, you may need to instruct them to turn on the interpretation on Zoom. There's a button on Zoom. They have to manually turn it on.
manually. Okay, I will ask.
That's a good, yeah, that's good.
1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, someone needs to communicate to them directly without the translation that they can hear, and then instruct them to do. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. Translate. Interpretation speaking. 1, 2, 1, 2. Can you hear me? 1, 2. Now you do. So everyone can hear me now? I'm the interpreter. Can you hear me? 1, 1, 2, 3. Interpreter speaking. 1, 2, 3. Interpreter speaking. Can you hear me? Okay. Oh, too bad. So I don't know if you can ask him to start over again or just continue as it is now, as you feel is natural now. So can everyone hear it? Can everyone hear now? Okay.
It's what what has been said before in English also.
I hear you.
Mentor apo e po për pak, do me thonë për mbledhje.
Well, the
But if there's anyone else who needs English, the way to tell them is whoever is speaking in Albanian should speak in English and say, turn on the button. That way they will hear.
It was introductory note about our round table, and it was about the misinterpretations and the wrong informations that are delivered by Russia on Kosovo. It has to do with the origin of these misinterpretations and misinformations, which can be traced up to the Serbian narratives at the beginning of the war in former Yugoslavia. Now there were two parallels that were drawn between Russia and Serbia in wars in former Yugoslavia. The first one was about the strategy that was applied. In wars in former Yugoslavia, Serbia did use to create, for instance, the Republic of Srpska Krajina or the Serbian Republic in Bosnia, and we have the same strategy applied by Russia in Transnistria in Moldavia, or in Southern Ossetia and Abkhazia in Georgia, and in Crimea and in Lugansk and in Donetsk in Ukraine. The second one is the denial. The second parallel is the denial of the existence of the state of Ukraine as a fake state, which is a strategy that is being applied also by Serbia towards Kosovo. Also, Serbia denies the existence of Kosovo. So we have de facto we have the same ideology and the same strategy that is being applied by both states. Up to now, these comparisons were not treated in a comprehensive manner, either by Kosovan authorities or by the West. And these comparisons, they have their own implications, not only regarding Kosovo and Ukraine, but also regarding the international orders, which is being changed rapidly after the Russian aggression in Ukraine. So this round table is an effort from our effort, which is made by us to treat the above mentioned narratives, as well as the implications and the responses that up to now were not existent or they were not adequate, either by Kosovo or by the West. So this is a kind of a summary of the entire speech of mine. Thank you.
Now, do you hear the translation?
Yes.
Good. So we're checking if it is working now, because the speech will follow in Albanian, so they want to see if you can hear the translation. You want to...
And loudly. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. I will speak it Albanian because I am not prepared right now to ndërruar pjesëmarrës. Kemi pas thuar të dhe tjerë, të faqësues të institucioneve, për fat që s'kan marrë pjesë, juve ju falenderoj, përfaqësues të shoqërisë civile, analist pavarur, përfaqësuesi i ambasadës franceze, posaçërisht falenderoj që ka marrë pjesë, dhe një falënderim i veçantë për ambasadorin Shmong, për profesorin Edvard Jozef, për kyçe online në punimet e kësaj Tryezë. Procesi i pavarësisë Kosovës ka kaluar nëpër faza të vështira dhe të dhimbshme për popullin e saj. Ai është autentik dhe siç është përsëritur shumë herë, sui generis. Ky proces është iniciuar nga procesi i shpërbërjes së ish Federatës Jugoslave, në të cilën Kosova ishte pjesë konstituive e saj, pra kishte hisën e saj edhe de facto edhe de jure në ish Federatën e Jugosllavisë. Prandaj, ky proces rezultoi me formimin e shteteve të reja brenda hapësirës së ish Federatës Jugoslave, duke shkaktuar një kosto të lartë për popujt e këtyre hapësirave, në kuadër saj edhe populli i Kosovës. Ku shkaktuan shumë viktima, shumë maksakra, shkatrime të bazës ekonomike, shtepive, ekonomive familjare e tjera. Gjitha këto janë bërë nga regjimi i Serbisë. Kosova, sikurse edhe njësi tjera konstituive të ish Jugosllavisë, e kishte shtetutën e vet, institucionet e veta të pavarura, u përball gjithashtu me një agresion të egër të Serbisë, e cila për të shtypur aspiratat e popullit të Kosovës për pavarësi, bëri masakra, pastrime etnike dhe shkatrimin e bazës ekonomike të popullatës së saj. Intervenimit të NATO-s dhe shpalljes së pavarësisë së Kosovës i kanë paraprit një seri negociatash të bashkisë ndërkombëtare me Serbinë për të ndalur masakrat dhe spastrimin etnik të Kosovës. Masakrat ndaj popullatës civile shqiptare në Kosovë, dhuna sistematike, fizike dhe ekonomike ndaj shqiptarëve të Kosovës nga regjimi i Serbisë, e cila ishte e paparë ndonjëherë që nga përfundimi i luftës së dytë botërore. Dhe këto gjitha kanë qenë të dokumentuara nga organizata kredibile, ndërkombëtare, qeveritare dhe jo qeveritare. Madje, këto janë dokumentuar edhe nga një pjesë e shoqërisë civile të Serbisë, nga opozitar dhe individ të saktuar, dhe vetëm ato që janë argumentuar nga, sidomos nga Fondi për Drejtën Humanitare në Beograd, mjaftojnë për të hodhur poshtë të gjitha këto pretendime për të krahasuar rastin e Kosovës, qoftë me intervenimin e Rusisë në Ukrainë, qoftë edhe në pjesët tjera të ish Federatës Ruse, ish Bashkimit Sovjetik. Domethënë se gjitha këto që janë dokumentuar, që dhuna, masakra, shkatrimi i bazës ekonomike e tjera, nuk ka ndodhur asnjëherë në asnjë vend tjetër në botë, as në Ukrainë. Këto i theksova më lart, janë vetëm disa nga faktet me të cilat dëshmohet se çlirimi dhe procesi i pavarësisë Kosovës është një rast unik, sui generis, në historinë e formimit të shteteve të pavarura në botë, duke rezultuar nga shpërbërja e një shteti dhe pas kësaj duke u përballur me një regim apartheidi me synime gjenocide. Rreth 60% e shqiptarëve të Kosovës janë depërtuar me dhunë jashtë shtetit, nga shtëpitë e tyre, nga ekonomitë e tyre, dhe kjo është ndërlidhur edhe me intervenimin e bashkisë ndërkombëtare për ta penguar këtë dhe për kthimin e popullatës në vendat dhe shtëpitë e tyre. Kosova pastaj u vendos në administrim ndërkombëtar me rezolutën e Këshillit të Sigurimit 1244. Prandaj e them se çdo tendencë, analogjie Në raste tjera në botë është e pa bazë dhe bëhet qëllimisht për të instrumentalizuar aspiratat e egoit për pretendime territoriale ndaj shteteve sorana apo edhe për të kamufluar hezitimet e disa shteteve që ende nuk e kanë njohur pavarësinë e Kosovës. Kjo natyrisht po pengon edhe proceset e shëndërtimit të Kosovës, përcimin e pozitës së saj ndërkombëtare, anëtarësimin e saj në organizata dhe institucione ndërkombëtare. Përmendja e rastit Kosovës si presedent nga ana e politikës zyrtare të Federatës Ruse për të arsytuar aneksimin e Krimes nga ana e saj dhe agresionit të saj ndaj Ukrainës po përsëritet vazhdimisht që nga viti 2014 dhe për habi kjo propaganda agresive edhe e Serbisë për çnjohje të pavarësisë Kosovës dhe për të përnguar njohje të reja po kalojnë pa përgjigje adekuate, serioze dhe të argumentuara për të vërtetën, qoftë nga shoqëria kosovare, por edhe nga komuniteti ndërkombëtar. Dhe mu kjo është përbrengosje, sepse mendoj se kjo propagandë e bazuar në falsifikime dhe dezinformata kundër pavarësisë Kosovës po ndikon negativisht në proceset në të cilat Kosova ende është duke u përballur. Instrumentalizimi i rastit Kosovës nga Putin dhe politika zyrtare e Federatës Ruse po bëhet para së gjithash në tentim për të legjitimuar aneksimin e pjesëve të territorit të Ukrainës dhe agresionin e saj duke pushtuar Ukrainën, gjë që aktualisht po bëhet me shkatrime dhe masakre ndaj popullatës civile, edhe pse rajonet që Rusia i pretendon asnjëherë nuk kanë patur ndonjë subjektivitet autonom, as pakisat ruse në Ukrainë nuk kanë qenë të shtypura nga autoritetet ukrainase dhe nuk kanë asnjë ngjashmëri që të krahasoheshin me rastin e Kosovës. Më herët tentim për konstruktuar analogji të ngjashme midis Kosovës e Republikës Srpska në Bosnjë dhe Hercegovinë kanë ngritur zyrtarët të Serbisë dhe të Republikës Serbe me qëllim të dezinformimit të opinionit ndërkombëtar dhe me këtë duke tentuar të ngadalësojnë procesin e njohje ndërkombëtare dhe ndërsimin e Kosovës në organizata ndërkombëtare, si dhe për të shpërqendruar dialogun për marrëveshje gjithëpërfshirëse për normalizimin e marrëdhënieve midis Kosovës dhe Serbisë. Gjithashtu, në këtë rast dëshiroj të theksoj se edhe në 5 vendet e BE-s që ende nuk e kanë njohur pavarësinë e Kosovës, her pas her ngriten analogji për të friksuar opinionin e tyre se Kosova mund të bëhet pretendent për situatat që ata pretendojnë që i kanë ngjashme me Kosovën. Kjo natyrisht nuk ka bazë reale, rasti i Kosovës nuk është i ngjashëm me asnjërin nga situatat e tyre. Dhe për më tepër, mosnjohja e Kosovës nga ana e tyre është bërë një nga pengesat e dialogut midis Kosovës dhe Serbisë dhe me këtë njëkohësisht edhe pengesë për procesin e integrimit të Kosovës po dhe të mbar rajonit në Bashkinë Evropiane. Shpresoj se debati që po zhvillohet sot në lidhje me këtë temë do të stimuloj një mobilizim të mirëfillt në rand të parë politike institucional, prandaj pastaj në rrafshin diplomatik, akademik dhe medial, për të evituar të tendenca dhe pasojat e tyre që i bazohen në analogjit konstruktuara dhe keqinterpretimet të procesit të pavarësisë së Kosovës. Në këtë drejtim nevojitet një përqendrim për të mobilizuar të gjithë këta akterë që u përmendën në drejtim të afirmimit matem të shtetit Kosovës dhe proceseve legjitime legale që kanë sjellë lirinë dhe pavarësinë e Kosovës. Ju falenderoj për vëmendje dhe durim.
Faleminderit, atëherë po i kaloj fjalën zotit Zimpeci nga Kipret për na folur për sfondin politik të narrativave të Rusisë në lidhje me Kosovën.
Thank you, Alban. Ambassador Schmunk, dear Edward, esteemed participants in this roundtable. Well, in my presentation, I will present a short overview of the Russian involvement in Kosovo from the beginning of the dissolution of Yugoslavia until 2017, when, as a result of the Moscow's diplomatic war, Kosovo experienced an unusual act in international politics, namely the withdrawal of recognition of its independence by Suriname. Secondly, I will analyze briefly the diplomatic war against Kosovo from 2017 that has escalated with the with the Russian invasion in Ukraine and its interrelation with Serbia, which is the most important stronghold of Moscow's influence in the Balkans. In the beginning of the breakup of Yugoslavia, Russia initially chose to ignore the problem of Kosovo by blocking its internationalization and by supporting Belgrade's actions. At that time, Foreign Minister Kozyrev used to play an accommodating game with the West, whereas when Primakov was appointed as a foreign minister, he made another choice. His choice was to confront the West and to project what he was labeling at the time a multipolar world. Well, after that, Russia unconditionally supported Serbia in Rambouillet talks and condemned NATO's intervention. However, it made a choice to join KFOR in 1999, but it left it in 2003. Russia didn't withdraw from its interest related to Kosovo with this act, but instead made the strategic decision to exercise influence over it by using mainly diplomatic power for pursuing its foreign policy interests and rivaling the West in the region. Well, with Kaide's report and reintroduction of the contact group in 2005, Russia again returned as a major player regarding Kosovo. In order to achieve a strategic benefit from this venture, according to well-known Bulgarian scholar Dimitar Bechev, President Putin played his cards right from the very outset. If Kosovo remained part of Serbia, this could have been marked as a diplomatic victory of Russia. On the other hand, if the West would oppose it and opt for Kosovo's independence, Russia would have tried to present it as a precedent with universal implications and to use it for pursuing territorial interests in its near neighborhood. In this policy line, Russia chose to ignore also the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice on the declaration of independence of Kosovo, which has been delivered in July 2010. I have to stress that during the first phase of the Kosovo-Serbia dialogue, facilitated by European Union, Russia was rather marginalized by Serbia. Nevertheless, a month after the I have to stress that there was not a high-level meeting between 2010 to 2013 between high officials of Russia and Serbia. Well, but a month after the first agreement on normalization of 1 month after the first agreement on normalization of relations between Kosovo and Serbia of April 2013, the Serbia's President Nikolic signed with Putin the declaration on strategic partnership between the two countries that marked a new important turn of Belgrade towards Moscow. The result of this unholy alliance between Russia and Serbia in relation to Kosovo soon became visible. On 27th of October 2017, Suriname announced that it had revoked the recognition of independence of Kosovo. Allegedly, this act has been undertaken in order to please Putin ahead of the first visit by the Suriname's Foreign Minister Polak Bey to Russia on October 31st, 2017. So Suriname withdrew recognition just 4 days before this visit. Position of Russia regarding Kosovo is very clear, and there are no doubts about it. So it aims to keep Kosovo's status as an open and unsettled issue, and also to turn the dialogue between Kosovo and Serbia into a never-ending story in order to weaken the credibility of the West and to keep the region unstable. Also, this position of Serbia is specified by many declarations of Kremlin and Foreign Ministry, which in essence do say that the process of the dialogue between Kosovo and Serbia should rely on international law and the fundamental document of the Kosovo settlement, namely the UN Security Council Resolution 1244, according to which the autonomous province of Kosovo is part of the Republic of Serbia, and that they believe that Kosovo issue can only be resolved on terms that are acceptable to Serbia. On January 18th, 2019, a day after his visit to Belgrade, Putin convened a meeting of the permanent members of the Russian Security Council. According to the statement issued after the meeting, the discussion was particularly focused on the outcomes of the talks with Vučić in relation to Kosovo. After this meeting, the Russian diplomatic war towards Kosovo intensified and was accompanied with more targeting and structured narratives. In the public statements delivered in the following months, especially by the Russian Foreign Ministry and the Russian mission to the United Nations, the following propaganda elements came at the forefront of the Russian diplomatic war against Kosovo. Well, they have mentioned in many cases alleged organ harvesting and trafficking related against the Kosovo's specialist chambers, labeling the majority of the members of Kosovo Security Force as former KLA terrorists, blaming the US and a number of other NATO countries for training and equipping with weapons the Kosovo Security Force and presenting it as a security threat for Kosovo Serbs, targeting the secrecy of the US bomb steel base in Kosovo, blaming Kosovo for virtually non-existent crimes against Kosovo Serbs, and including Serbian Orthodox Church, and they were especially focused on changing the narratives of the war of 1999 in Kosovo. And also they were presenting Kosovo as a fake and failed state and a stronghold of Islamic terrorists. Ironically, Serbian foreign ministers and especially President Vučić in the meetings of the United Nations Security Council used less harsh vocabulary towards Kosovo than the representatives of Russia. Although they criticized the performance of KFOR and EULEX, and they certainly were trying to present a bleak picture of Kosovo, their narratives did not match the tough harshness of those of Russia. Furthermore, Russia has not objections on the partition of Kosovo. According to Russian ambassador to Serbia, Hrashenko, partition of Kosovo would not set a precedent for territorial division in Europe, thus indicating that Moscow has nothing against this option, which at the end of the day will only serve to its hegemonic interests in its neighborhood. Serbia's commitment to move its embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem as a part of the Washington Agreement, which is also in collision with the position of Russia regarding the Palestinian question, and voting of the United Nations General Assembly resolutions on Russian invasion in Ukraine were not criticized by Moscow, thus signaling that deviations of Belgrade from Moscow's position will be tolerated as long as they do not endanger the Russian interest, that is, the interest to keep the upper hand on Kosovo-Serbia dispute in quest for influence and rivalry with Washington and Brussels in the Balkans, and benefiting from this situation in its near neighborhood. Although Russia has used Kosovo's independence as justifications for the illegal annexation of Ukraine, for the first time, the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice on Kosovo's independence as a precedent for the declaration of independence of the separatist regions of Donetsk and Lugansk were used by Putin as a justification for invasion of Ukraine in the meeting with UN Secretary General Guterres few weeks ago. We have to remind one fact, that referring to the case of North Cyprus, Rhodesia, and Republika Srpska, the International Court of Justice stated that illegality attached to the declarations of independence thus stemmed not from the unilateral character of these declarations as such, but from the very fact that they were or would have been connected with unlawful use of force or other aggressions, egregious violations of norms of general international law, in particular with those of peremptory character, use cogents in this case. This is the misinterpretation of the International Court of Justice opinion by Russia that has been ignored by Guterres, who in the meeting with Putin responded by saying that Kosovo is not a UN member in trying to defend his position when he was attacked by, actually, verbally by Putin. This is a new development that requires a proper response from the national authorities of Kosovo and the Western allies. These responses so far were missing by the majority of Western countries and Kosovo, especially Kosovo. We shall not forget that the war in Kosovo has been finished 23 years ago and that Kosovo has declared independence 14 years ago. Nowadays, majority of foreign policy leaders around the world have no memory of the developments that led to NATO intervention and the independence of Kosovo. I have to express my concern that, especially right now, it is unacceptable that 5 EU non-recognizers, with the exception of Greece, are ignoring still the ICJ's advisory opinion on Kosovo and are using more or less the same legal narratives with Russia in relation to the independence of Kosovo. Thank you very much for your attention, and looking forward to fruitful discussion.
Faleminderit shumë zoti Peci për këtë pasqyrim të detajuar të fundit politik të narrativa të Rusisë në lidhje me Kosovën dhe në mënyrë kronologjike. Dhe me këtë unë do I kaloj fjalën ambasadorit Michael Schmung, që të na flet për implikimet e gjithë kësaj për politikën e jashtme të BE-s. Ambassador Schmung, I pass the floor on to you.
Thank you. Mirita to everybody, of course, from Hamburg. Thank you very much for having me this afternoon in Pristina, and I say Mirita to Reinvest and to Kiprit, of course. Can you understand me?
Yeah. Yes,
Do I have to speak louder or
it's fine. It's fine.
is it fine? Okay. With a view to our time shortage, I will try to read most of what I have to say, so to save a little bit of minutes. Already in Cologne at the G8 summit, where the UN resolution 1244 was adopted, the representatives of the Russian Federation had warned us, quote, "You have created a breach of international law and a dangerous precedent that will haunt you," end of quote. And yes, the Kremlin came back to the Kosovo case wherever suitable for Russia. Abkhazia, South Ossetia, Donbass, Crimea, and so on. On top, the Russians have always claimed that the endangered Russian population, in most cases the Russian minority in these countries, had called for help, and thus troops to invade and protect. So the historical events in and around Kosovo have been haunting us, but still, I think we were right. First, talking about 99 and 22. We must make a difference between the war and between the separatism, declaration of independence, recognition, and sovereignty questions. About Putin's bloody, illegal war against Ukraine, and here in particular purposely against innocent civilians, nothing has to be added. Everything has been said. The UN General Assembly has condemned this war with an overwhelming majority. To try to compare Putin's special operation with NATO airstrikes, a typical Lavrov trick, is more than ridiculous. NATO aimed at stopping atrocities and bloodshed, even genocide-like action, through surgical, cautious action. Putin, however, wants to kill and to annex Ukraine's territory, to oppress Ukrainians, to force Ukrainians to become Russians. Second, rather we have been talking today again about the two conflicting international law principles, the inviolability of the sovereignty of states and the right to self-determination. Can the two oblasts concerned in the Donbass claim the same right to self-determination as Kosovars did in 2008? This has been a tricky, conflicting debate among international law experts in Europe and in the transatlantic world. And of course, from the Kremlin side. Interesting enough, governments both in the US and in the EU, to my knowledge, have so far avoided to call clear arguments for the Western position. A lot has to be done here, I think, by research institutions. And if I'm correct, both constitutions in then Yugoslavia, means Serbia, Montenegro, and in Ukraine did or do not provide for separatism of republics or oblasts. In the case of Ukraine, the oblasts concerned and Russia have been also referring to the fact that both in Minsk I and Minsk II agreements, the need for, quote, local governance or even, quote, autonomy had been agreed upon among all signatory parties. We have to keep that in mind. The case is not easy. We have to critically look into all these facts before we got a final answer. The 5 EU non-recognizers of Kosovo have been arguing this way more or less. Lulzen just mentioned it. NATO critical international law experts and politicians in Western parliaments and in the European Parliament have argued this way also. We should not forget that. Now, has Kosovo 1999 be the precedent already referred to in 1999 by the Kremlin mentioned for Russia's attack on Ukraine? I argue no. There has been no physical threat to the lives of the ethnic Russians, or primarily Russian-speaking Ukrainians in Luhansk and Donetsk oblasts, different from the Albanians in Serbia at that time. NATO intervened in 1999 to stop serious human rights violations and atrocities within the framework of R2P. NATO did not aim at civilians. So around 500 casualties could not be avoided. NATO never ever intended to intervene to make Kosovo part of any other country or to annex Kosovo. It's an international organization. The inner situation, the constitutional situation, declaration of independence, autonomy, are all these provided in the constitutions. We have to cautiously look into this. What's with Abkhazia, Ossetia, Georgia, Crimea? What is with Scotland, Corsica, Catalonia? Are they all comparable to each other? One has to differentiate. We had a positive case with the Czech Republic and Slovakia, where both sides agreed to separate peacefully. As far as I read the introductory paper to this roundtable, the question that lies on the table is, has Kosovo been a case sui generis? A tricky question. I argue yes, although it might be limping here and there a little bit regarding the autonomy and independence request. But that can be worked on in some research. Clear majority of the world, 115 recognizers, sees it this way, recognizing Kosovo. Can they all be wrong? A very large majority of the UN Assembly majority does not see this in the same way for Russia's war and the Donbas Declaration of Independence. Why has practically no one so far recognized Abkhazia, South Ossetia, Crimea, Transnistria, Nagorno-Karabakh? All these illegal, though de facto states. NATO acted within the humanitarian-oriented R2P framework, as I mentioned it before, with cautious surgical airstrikes to stop these atrocities, not to inflict them for imperial purposes. There has been no ethnic cleansing in Donbass. And Serbia's Yugoslavia, on the other side, had oppressed and tortured Kosovars over a long period. There has not been any proof that the same had happened to the Donbas oblasts. This is my conclusion to the question if, and there are good arguments for the case that Kosovo, in comparison to the Donbas, is really a case sui generis and has to be seen in its historical framework. I don't want to end here, dear inviters from Reinvest and from Kiprit, without mentioning 3 points that are very important to me with regard to the near future, based on what we have said this afternoon. What are the impacts of the war against Ukraine on the Western Balkans? The war against Ukraine forces a long overdue enlargement debate upon the EU. President Macron's speech at the European Parliament on 9th of May proposes, if you read that carefully, to implement something like an EU light. Some EU that is different from the classic EU, as you may say, and would be a smaller political EU. What would that mean for the Western Balkans? What Macron said on 9th of May. On the other hand, there have been many experts and scientists as well that have argued that the window for full membership of the 6 Western Balkan states that are still out of the European Union is not very good. So why not to go for full economic integration, means 100%, following, for example, the examples of Norway and Iceland, and then to work and wait for the full integration. Visa liberalization. I think to ask for the same visa regulations as for the other 5 Western Balkan states, and looking at what has been said with regard to Ukraine, where a certain euphoria takes place, I think it's more than overdue that full visa liberalization will be granted to Kosovo now. There are no arguments against it. Everything that happens in this field is mere discrimination, and it's a shame, I think, for the European member states and the EU Commission in Brussels that they haven't provided that liberalization yet. I say this also in the direction of my own government, the German government, but I see that in Parliament there is an unfolding majority in this way. And if you have listened to Chancellor Scholz and to Foreign Minister Baerbock in the recent days, you might have heard in between the lines that actually they think the same way. And last, membership of Kosovo in the Council of Europe. Tomorrow, at the Committee of Ministers in Torino, Italy has a chairmanship, a positive decision on Kosovo's membership application should be taken and be handed over to the Parliamentarian Assembly of the Council of Europe. This would be an important preparatory step, in particular because then Kosovo would become a member of the European Convention of Human Rights for becoming a member of the EU in the end. 31 votes out of 46 are needed tomorrow. And I think if everything goes right, 34 seem to be secured. This would be, as I see it, a moment of truth, also with regard to EU membership of Kosovo. Let's hope that Serbia and the 5 non-recognizers will see it that way tomorrow too. Thank you.
Faleminderit për këtë argumentim të detajuar, sepse Kosova është ndryshe nga situatat që tjera që citohen prej Federatës Ruse dhe që gabimisht mund citohen edhe nga vende tjera, dhe se si Kosova është rast unik në këtë kontekst. Me këtë unë i kaloj fjalën zotit Edward Joseph, bashkëpunëtor i lartë në shkollën e studimeve të avancuara ndërkombëtare pranë Johns Hopkins University. Zoti Joseph, po ju kaloj fjalën juaj.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I want to send special thanks to my friend and co-writer and co-author and colleague Luzim Petsi for this invitation, and it is really a privilege to join all of you. All of the speakers I've appreciated, and including our most recent one, Ambassador Schmunk. And it's for that reason, the fact that you all have covered so much of my points, I'm going to do the opposite of Ambassador Schmunk, and instead of reading prepared text, let me just respond to a few points and give you my overall question for you, and I'll start with that. Ambassador Schmunk, I think quite rightly, closed by giving his 3 points about the impact of the war in Ukraine, Russia's unprovoked invasion, on the Balkans. And I would characterize it in this way. I think we have a paradox, and I call it the paradox of buffone. And that's an Italian word, the paradox of buffone. And you know that word, the word means clown. And the reason I use that is this, because one of the most graphic examples of change, of how this invasion altered things, came when the Italian politician Matteo Salvini went to the border of Ukraine in Poland and came there in a grand gesture, supposedly of support for the Ukrainian refugees. And he was greeted by the mayor of the town near where many of these refugees that had flooded into Poland were housed. And I hope you've seen the video on Twitter, what happened. The mayor, rather than just going along with this, exposed Salvini as a fraud. He exposed him as a supporter of Putin in a very clear way. And Italian journalists who were there saw this when Salvini tried to protest and say, oh, no, I'm on the side of the refugees and all the humanitarian aid. The Italian journalists themselves said, buffone, you're a clown. And that's the paradox of the Balkans. You see, it's not so complicated. This crisis is clarifying. It's clarified so much in Europe. We see this dramatic change. Ambassador Schwung, forgive me for my German, but this Zeitwende, if I have it right, this dramatic sea change in Germany of its perspectives. Finland and Sweden, also this dramatic sea change there. But in the Balkans, we don't see this sea change. We know that the pro-Russian forces in the region, of course, led by President Alexander Vučić, have been weakened and damaged. But do we see this, help me, Ambassador Schmuck, Zeitwende? No, we don't. And here I'm speaking again, going out of sequence from what I prepared, but it's very important. Ambassador Schmuck mentioned the Council of Europe, and I agree with him. This would be a tremendous step, but I have to say my information, and I hope I'm wrong. Let me say this, I really hope my information is wrong, but I can tell you it comes from pretty good sources, is that this will not go forward, and it will not be because of the vote. My information is that it will not be put on the agenda tomorrow in Torino, that there will be no vote on this. That's my information. Again, I hope that my information is wrong, and I couldn't agree more with Ambassador Schmuck about the importance of this. And but it shows if it's correct, and it either fails due to a vote or because it wasn't put on the agenda, it's a step backwards, and it all goes back to the subject that we're all talking about, Kosovo and the status of Kosovo. So that's really the paradox that we all face. Here, there's this weakening of pro-Russian forces. There's this great opportunity to finally close this chapter, and yet, if the information I have is correct, tomorrow, the members of the Council of Europe do not go forward with this vote and instead say, oh, no, we shouldn't do this now because it will damage the dialogue. That's a step helping buffone. It's helping buffone. And we shouldn't do that. We should not help clowns who have not made the decision that they have to make because there's no doubt about it anymore. There's no doubt about where people stand. And, Borrell made this point very clearly in the meeting Monday with the foreign ministers, and that included Foreign Minister Selakovic of Serbia. And to his credit, Mr. Borrell said, there's no neutrality. There's no neutrality these days. So those are good words from Mr. Borrell, but what are the actions? What are the actions? And the actions appear to be that we have to preserve the dialogue. Because if we allow Kosovo into the Council of Europe, this will be the underlying reasoning, whatever they say. But if it fails tomorrow in Tirana, it will be because, oh, we don't want to disturb the dialogue, and that's helping Buffone, helping the Salvini or Vucic, whatever, helping them continue and avoid making these decisions because we have a dialogue. And here I pivot and I go back to Luzim and Luli and I, along with co-authors, not only obviously Luli from Kosovo, but an esteemed co-author from Serbia and from the 3 of the 5 non-recognizers, or 3 out of the 4 NATO non-recognizers. We wrote a report in January, and in which we explained the problem, not just the problem for Kosovo, but the problem for the entire region. And that is Serbia's refusal to recognize. This is what, it's not just keeping Kosovo hostage, as we wrote, it's keeping the entire region hostage. Because the United States and the European Union are unable to act in direct fashion with Serbia and hold Serbia to the same standards on democratic development and on corruption and all the other internal problems because of Serbia's leverage over Kosovo. And we laid this out. And we explained this in our report, which came out in January. We explained it in 2 parts. The first was we explained why this is the case, why the Kosovo status is so central. And then, because we're realistic, we operate in the real world and we understand that there's opposition in Spain and Slovakia, etc. We came up with a way to plausibly address it. And we came up with 3 very practical ways. Now, this is before the Russian invasion, but we mentioned there in January, because this was all coming, that this would be another deterrent against Putin. If you took away his Kosovo shield that one of the several, including Luli, have mentioned that he's used as a club, if you take this away, and in so doing, take away his strategic partner, which another of you pointed out, and Luli noted, Nikolic signing the strategic partnership, that would have been an additional deterrent. Even now, it would be quite beneficial to do that. And the way and the reason is through the non-recognizers. And we explained both why and how that is. And unfortunately, the indications are, and again, tomorrow will be a very good indicator of that, there is the belief, and in my view, it's an illusion, that the dialogue has a pathway to recognition. President Biden has repeatedly stated that mutual recognition is the goal. In Berlin, there's been a significant change. In Berlin also says now recognition is the goal. But what is the pathway to get there? The dialogue? Do we see any indicators in Belgrade that President Vucic is ready for this? Again, forgive me for my German, the Zeitwende. No, we don't see any indicators. I joked with an EU official the other night that Borrell should be given a medal for courage because he dared to sit in the same room with Foreign Minister Selakovic when there have been all these bomb threats, apparently, that we hear about all the time. And of course, we know what these are, these bomb threats. This is meant to sow chaos and to convince and present the Serbian public not with a reason to put sanctions on Russia or make concessions and actually negotiate in earnest with Kosovo, but the opposite. They are sowing resentment against the West. And we know Serbian media continues, not as bad as it was before, but basically it helps to promote a Russian narrative on the war in Ukraine. So that's the concern. Because we do not tackle the problem, we continue to invest in illusions. We invest in a dialogue that can't work as long as Serbia has the structural leverage, which it does because of the non-recognizers. And here, let me close, because I'm sure I'm coming out of time, but I can only, again, agree with Ambassador Schmunk and the others about the centrality of this problem, and I agree totally with him about the differences between the two. But fundamentally, neither the US nor the EU have really understood, and I think in part it's a lack of understanding, not just political will, why the non-recognition is such a problem. And I've been in meetings with EU diplomats and they say, oh, but it's not such a problem, the non-recognition. All of these non-recognizers have friendly stance and they want to see Kosovo in the EU. It's not the point. The point is the non-recognition, and again, this is all explained in our report. The non-recognition hands the leverage to Belgrade. And basically the position of the non-recognizers is, we won't recognize Kosovo until Belgrade does. And then by doing that, they hand the proxy. They basically give Belgrade the same power over Kosovo that Sofia has over Skopje. It's the same. We know Bulgaria blocks North Macedonia, and in it, Albania as well, because it has the power to do so. That's why. It's not anything else. It's the power it has to do this. It's an EU member, so it can block. And that's the same dynamic with Kosovo and Serbia. And that's why this dialogue is an illusion, essentially, because it remains an illusion as long as Serbia is Bulgaria. As long as Serbia has the power of Bulgaria, effectively, the status quo suits Serbia, and the dynamics don't change. And let me quickly, I would be remiss if I didn't say this. Let's quickly talk about Prime Minister Kurti here, because there's a lot of discussion and a lot of focus both in Washington and Brussels and across EU capitals. And we should talk about this, especially in Pristina. Kurti is the problem. Okay. He's in many respects, he has been problematic in his policies and posture here. He is, in my view, unnecessarily aggravated relationships of Kosovo, important relationships with the United States and with key European Union members. He's unnecessarily aggravated that, and here's why. The essence of it is not because he needs to make some big grand concessions to Belgrade. He doesn't owe concessions to Belgrade. Those are tied up in the final status, and that's where it is. And they're tied up in the, even including the association. This is tied up on the final status of Kosovo with recognition on the table. So it's not concessions he needs to make to Serbia. It's this. Responsibilities to the Kosovo Serbs. They are his citizens. No matter what Belgrade does, no matter who they vote for, they are Kosovo citizens, and Prime Minister Kurti and all Kosovo governments have an existing, not a contingent responsibility, depending on what Belgrade does, an existing responsibility to fulfill those obligations. I don't include the association as part of that. That's to be discussed. It's an obligation of Kosovo. Kosovo has to discuss it, but in the context of final recognition. But there are existing responsibilities on property, on Dechani property, on the voting and the ability of Kosovo Serbs to vote as dual citizens, which is their right in accordance with European standards, in accordance with OSCE. An agreement I'm quite familiar with. And so that is a problem. That part of it is a problem. And Prime Minister Kurti needs to address that in order to ensure that and maximize the prospects that, that this issue of non-recognition will be properly addressed. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Joseph. Faleminderit mirë të veçantë për reagimet në pikat e parafolësve, si edhe në konstruktimin e fokusit BE-s që me veprime, mos veprimet veta, synon që të mbetet e shqetësuar për të mos shqetësuar dialogun, i cili siç e thet ju mbetet ende iluzor. Unë po e hapi diskutimin me pjesëmarrës tjerë për refleksione, komente dhe pyetje nëse kam për folësit. Fjala për ju, kushdo që dëshiron të marrë fjalën.
Ju faleminderit. Se përket qëndrimit të vendeve evropiane karshi njohjes së Kosovës, po mendoj se cila prej vendeve me pozicionin e vet i jep përparësi njërës së palës tjetër. Fakti që 22 nga 27 vendet e Bashkimit Evropian e njohin Kosovën, në të rast kjo është një përparësi për Kosovën. Kurse fakti që ato 5 tjera nuk e njohin, japin përparësie Serbisë. Në këtë kontekst, kur po flasim për konfliktin mes të Perëndimit dhe Rusisë, atëherë këto 5 vendet e Bashkimit Evropian automatikisht bëhen aleatët të Rusisë, sepse në një çështje të caktuar ato marrin një pozicion të cilën edhe Rusia. Prandaj është e pritshme që vendet të cilët e njohin Kosovën dhe që janë në konflikt me Rusinë, këtyre dhe që janë njëkohësisht në organizma të përbashkët, siç është NATO, me këto 4 vendet të Bashkimit Evropian, Greqinë, në Rumëninë, Slovakinë edhe Spanjën, dhe Bashkimi Evropian shto këtyre 4 vendeve edhe Çiprën, atëherë është koha edhe vendi që këto vendet tjera pra t'ju bëjnë presion që të kenë një zë karshi këtij problemi. Pas përndryshe, më thonë, kjo nuk është një gjë që dëmton vetëm Kosovën, natyrisht Kosovën e dëmton fakti që këto edhe i ul pazarin në diskutimet me Serbinë për e Kosovës, në këtë rast dëmton edhe vendimet karshie në konfliktin që kanë me Rusinë. Ndoshta të çka foli zoti Joseph është folën këtë linjë, por nuk elaboroj cilat janë arsyet, domethënë që vendet e fuqishme, si mendoj si Amerika, Anglia, Franca, Gjermania e tjerë, nuk po bëjnë një presion më të madh karshi këtyre vendeve. Është cila është arsyeja që në këto momente përveç një thirrjes gjenerale që kjo duhet të ndodhë, nuk kemi ndonjë presion konkret këtyre vendeve për të njohur Kosovën, qoftë edhe në kontekstin e konfliktit me Rusinë. Faleminderit për momentin. Kam drejt me marr fjalën më vonë apo?
Dikush tjetër prej audiencës? Edward, did you have a comment that you want to make? Oh. Edward, can you hear us? I think your microphone is muted.
Yes.
Okay, it's fine now.
No, I did not hear. I asked, did you want me to respond? And I'm happy to respond.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's a great question. I think it's an extremely important question. that the individual, the gentleman just mentioned, which is you hear all of this discussion. Oh, there's pressure, and I believe it's true. I don't think it's just pro forma. I think Berlin has changed, and I think in among some, and I think in the U.S. there's also impatience and there's an expectation that Serbia has to put on sanctions. But I agree with the thrust of the question. Where is it? And how is this pressure going to ultimately be manifested? I don't see, in my view, again, could be wrong, but I don't see a deadline on this, number one. And I don't see either a concept for this that where Vučić is going to be presented and say, look, you need to do this or your EU candidacy is going to be suspended, or other measures that I think actually Germany is in quite a good position to take, particularly as an EU state. I don't mean to single it out, but Germany is a very important country with a very big economy, and it commands a special attention in Belgrade. And I don't see yet, as the questioner suggests, the will to do that. And the reason is, and this comes again from the report that Luli and I and others wrote, it's because of Kosovo. It's because there's fear. There's a fear underlying this. Oh my gosh, if we put this absolutely to a pressure, think about it, let's play this out. We suspend Serbia's EU candidacy. Oh my God, this is a victory for Putin. Oh my gosh, then we giving them every reason to reject, and obviously there'll be nothing on Kosovo, and we'll be putting them back into the Russian camp, and the Chinese will be even only stronger in Belgrade. And I think that's probably the reason here, and we have to remember that was the same reasoning before the invasion. We noted this in the report, but it's so graphic. Ambassador Schmuck is a diplomat, and he knows this and understands this. You hear diplomats go to all of these countries in the region, and what do they talk about? Corruption. You hear, especially Bosnia-Herzegovina. You also heard it in Albania. In North Macedonia, it's talked about corruption. Do you hear U.S. or EU officials in Belgrade talk about the systemic corruption that has given Vučić his power for now 10 years? Creating an Orban-style political machine. No, you don't hear that. And the reason is fear. So, oh my gosh, if we talk about corruption, oh my gosh, we won't have cooperation in the dialogue. It's all because of the weakness due to the non-recognizers. By handing the leverage to Belgrade, we don't have the leverage. And because we don't have the leverage, we don't have the mettle to stand up for this. And that's why I say tomorrow, I'm going to mention one other example, but I say tomorrow with the Council of Europe is a huge test case, in one way or the other. If they go through, as Ambassador Schmuck suggests they should, and as I totally agree, that will be a break. And I totally agree. Ambassador Schmuck was so right. He used the term moment of truth. He's so correct on this. If they go through and give and send this to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, well, then maybe we're in a new era. Maybe we really are finally free of this fear-based posture towards the Balkans and towards Serbia. But if they do not, then we are in the same position. And I'm going to give one other example here. Open Balkans. Why are we promoting Open Balkans? Why is there a need for Open Balkans? Everyone agrees that on the benefits of a regional common market. And again, we have Germany in the lead on this, on the Berlin process. it exists. The SEFTA, if there needs to be a formalized arrangement, SEFTA already exists. So why do we need open Balkans? Why do we need a duplicative effort? Well, we know why. Because Serbia and of its objections to the manner of Kosovo's participation in that, even though there have been actually signed agreements, even the signatures on the same page. But it makes no sense of having a duplicative effort where the economic benefits are not part of a political process that brings in European Union values. And so that's another indicator, the continuing promotion of a duplicative effort that is actively embraced by Belgrade. So embraced by Belgrade and has had support, guess where? From Russia. Russia has also generally given indications of support to open Balkans. As Luli pointed out so well there, it supports this endless dialogue, endless dragging out. And this is another way, and quite conducive to this perpetual problem. So that's the answer to my question. Why? Because of the leverage given to Belgrade by the non-recognizers and the fear of the consequences. That's my answer. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please. Yep.
May I just, for a couple of minutes, answer to some of the points Ed made very quickly?
Yes, please.
Thank you. By the way, Ed, I will propose you to become a member of the Johann Wolfgang Goethe Society. The way you pronounce Zeitenwende is wonderful, but I have to disappoint you. There's another word used by others. It's called Zeitenbruch, break of times. So you may exercise it tonight with a good beer. Let me get back to what Ed said in his wonderful, precise and to the point presentation, and there was practically no point where I could have disagreed with him. Council of Europe, yes, I have heard the same rumors there. But that would mean, of course, that if it's been taken from the agenda tomorrow or not even brought on the agenda, that we have to wait for a very long time until the council will deal with this topic again, and that would be more than a shame. That would be a small scandal. And I take here my diplomatic mask off, if you all allow, and say a couple more addressing words. You see, over the last decades, we have always seen from, and I say it particularly this way, from major European capitals, the mantra being repeated and repeated: stability, stability, no stress, no stress. Please, no stress. Everything must remain stable. Let's keep it as it is. And I have to say, here and there, I have information that even my own capital may be behind of some of these things. Don't let us bring it on the agenda or on the screen. It's not the right time for it, but we have been hearing these arguments for so many decades now that it's unbelievable. Yes, the non-recognition topic, it all favors Belgrade. In most of the bigger capitals, as well as in Brussels, Serbia relatively quickly has become, in their world, in the Europeans' world, again, the anchor point of a future order in that Western Balkans region. Although they were the ones that started the war and did all these atrocities, after 10 years or so, we saw it coming that everyone looks again at Belgrade, the biggest country, the best organized country, all these things we hear time and again. And behind all this is, stability, no stress, stability, no stress, and don't dig too deeply. And now we have seen what that means. We have the same thing with Bulgaria, and they all profit from their position. And I do not see that in the European Union and that there is a real will to change it. I referred to the speech of 9 of May at the Strasbourg Parliament by Macron. Read this speech carefully. And there is something in there for the Western Balkans, and I think that has to be carefully analyzed. Yes, and the same thing is true with what you said about Prime Minister Kurti and his government. They also work with reciprocity. Each and every other country in the world does it. Yeah? Moscow expels some diplomats, and then London expels the same number of diplomats, and so forth and so forth. This is a regular instrument of diplomatic and political cooperation, and we shouldn't be, and Belgrade and others shouldn't be surprised about this. I very quickly mentioned in my presentation that we have to look also into what the war against Ukraine means for the Western Balkans. There is more in it than we have mentioned today. I think that should be carefully analyzed by scholars. The euphoria regarding the refugees coming from Ukraine, the euphoria with regard to Ukraine becoming as quickly as possible a full member of the European Union, and many, many other things, I think is overwhelming. Why is that so? Yes, we had something like this for a very short moment during the Kosovo War and after, when some European countries, in particular also Germany, took a lot of Kosovo refugees and tried to help them. But what we have been seeing in the last weeks happening in and around Ukraine is something special. Why do they get immediately jobs when they come to Hamburg? Why do they get free health insurance? Why do they get free transportation on all public transportation facilities? Why do the children get one of the rare kindergarten places, something very special here? There's a big shortage of them. What is in there, and what does this mean on the other side for Europe's interest in the Western Balkans becoming eventually, as we all hope, full members of the European Union? And last, the pressure question of the 22 on the 5. And again, I can only repeat it. This is about the demand for stability and the demand for no stress. Leave these 5 alone. Don't force them to become real troublemakers. As long as they are quietly behind the scenes cooperate, that's fine, but it's not the right window for more. How often have we been hearing in the last decades, it's not the right window for Kosovo right now. We have missed the right window then, and then we again have missed the right window for this and then. I want to be fair and put a lot of hope on what the new German red-green government has been announcing, has written into the coalition contract, and into all these announcements we have been hearing and seeing in the last days. I think it's high time to make all pressure possible. And I have recommended for a long time, Lutsen will remember this, I'm against the regatta principle when it comes to becoming member of the European Union. I have always proposed that the Western Balkan countries should find a recipe and a formula to request membership as a bloc. I think that is the only chance politically that all 6 would get into there. We all know what it would mean if Serbia would be the first one, and what would happen then to the other remaining 5. Thank you.
Vetëm një reagim të shpejt prej zotit Spahiu, më pas fjalën zotit Hamidi.
Mr. Joseph, I agree whatever you said previously, but I'm not sure that I was translated properly. Just let me make more concrete my question. When it comes to this Russian West and Russian fight over Ukraine, West is pressing Serbia to take a side. I mean, but it's not doing the same to Slovakia, to Spain, to Cyprus and Greece and Romania to take a side. De facto, by not recognizing Kosovo, they are taking the side. They are holding Russian side. And my question was why there is no more pressure from biggest countries of the West, United States, Germany, UK, France, and the others, to those countries to recognize Kosovo, because it's time to say in which side you are. If you are in the Western side, then you should now recognize Kosovo. Thanks. The same question was even to Schmunk, so about the Germany.
I think
So to see
let's go ahead for the American side.
Russian regarding Kosovo. Thanks a lot.
Go ahead, Edward.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for being precise with your question. And it is important. It's important to be precise about it. Your question is, well, everyone's being pressured to take a side. Serbia, everyone is voluntarily, actually, most of them have come and taken a side, and Serbia is being pressured. Why not these non-recognized? That's your question. Why is there not this pressure? And I'll tell you, the main reason is that the connection to Kosovo is not as understood the way we all participating in this understand it. And then that's one of the reasons why we wrote that report. And by the way, let me say the title of it so people can easily Google it. It's from SAIS and Wilson Center, and it's called From Crisis to Convergence. If you Google Wilson Center Convergence, it will come up. Wilson Center Convergence is because that's what we want. We want the non-recognizers to converge with the majority of EU and NATO states that do recognize. Non-recognizers should come over. The answer to your question is, first, they don't appreciate the importance of and the obstacle that non-recognition presents. That's number one. There's not the same appreciation, and that's what we spelled out. Number two is there's the illusion that I mentioned that, there's a process. There's a way through. So this is an obstacle in and of itself. The existence of the dialogue creates the illusion of a process. And that, now Serbia is under more pressure, so we can get there. We just need to get Kurti to do a couple things, and then we'll get there, we'll get them in the room and everything, and then we can give some pressure and they'll get a deal. Well, you're leaving the structural problem intact. And we just don't see the indications. Again, tomorrow, Council of Europe vote will be an indicator on this. If it goes through, then, let's see, more things are possible. But that's the second answer, is the illusion. Then there's the third answer. The third answer is, you asked, everyone's being asked to take a side. And why don't they take a side? Well, they have taken a side on the war in Ukraine. So you have to understand, it's very important to understand that there's the war in Ukraine and then there's the Balkans. And the war in Ukraine takes precedence. So let's take Slovakia. Slovakia gave S-300 anti-missile to Ukraine. That was a very big step. And let's remember, in Slovakia, they have, pro-Russia strain, fortunately marginalized, buffone, as I said before, but still they have to contend with that. And that was some risk. Russia can say, we're going to go after you. So they gave S-300s. Bulgaria does, through U.S., provides ammunition and in other ways, even had its gas cut off by Russia, which shows, Bulgaria has chosen in that sense. It has a prime minister who's has a pro-EU orientation. These are not Orban-type countries. The president there, Radev, is a different character, but not the prime minister. And certainly not in Slovakia. The government is pro-Western, pro-NATO, and also Bulgaria, Petkov is pro-NATO. So you have that. So in that sense, their answer to you would be, well, we are choosing. We gave S-300s. So we have given. And then there's the fourth reason, answer to your question, is that you have still in, let's say, Spain, which is not on the front lines like Slovakia and Bulgaria, but you have it in Spain, this belief that, oh my God, if we recognize Kosovo, oh my God, Catalonia. And of course, all of us in this room, every single one, I'm sure, who I presume all those listening, but certainly everyone who has spoken, we all get it. We all understand that it's the other way. One of the speakers put it exactly right. I think one of you mentioned Madrid should be aligned with Pristina, not with Belgrade on this. We understand that, but they don't. And because they don't, it's a political lift. We use that term in English, it's particularly in the US, we call it a political lift. It's a heavy lift, it's a burden, something that the Biden administration would have to undertake. And Ambassador Schwab spoke as a diplomat on this and understands. And they don't want to take on more work. It's more work. And trust me, I'm someone who speaks to U.S. officials, and I speak to European Union officials, and we put this out in our report. And we try to explain the way to do the lift. It's not to grab them by the throat and say, Madrid, you recognize now Kosovo, although that would be great. We've created what we call convergence, step-by-step process. And we created here, permit me to explain this, Luli obviously knows this, we gave the easiest possible step, the easiest possible forward step that would immediately be taken in Belgrade and in Moscow as a signal that things are changing. And you know what that step is? Spain and Slovakia could send their troops back to KFOR. The easiest, Luli again knows this. This is in our report. It's one of our key. We have 10 steps that could easily be done to move this. Not to grab the Spanish and say, oh, tomorrow you have to sign this paper and recognize. No, obviously would be great, but not likely to happen. No, but why can't Spain and why can't Slovakia send their troops back to KFOR? That's NATO. That's NATO. And the KFOR mission, that doesn't mean a status thing. And technically, it's essentially status neutral. They've even used that term by participating in there. Romania troops are in KFOR. Greek troops are in KFOR, never left. How come if Romania can have their troops there and Greece can have their troops there, why can't Slovakia and Spain? And even more reason to do it. Guess what country had to take its troops out of KFOR? Guess what country? Yes, you guessed right, Ukraine. Ukraine had to take their troops back because they had to fight. They had to go to the front lines and fight to defend their country. That's perfectly understandable. And that creates all the more opening here for Madrid and Bratislava to say, oh my gosh, and to tell any pro-Serb or worrying Russian faction in the country to say, look, Ukraine had to remove their troops, so we're going to definitely go back now. Now is the time for us to show our unity in the NATO alliance. And we proposed this. This was in January in noting the invasion and the potential of the invasion. And so that's an easy step. The government doesn't collapse. There's no controversy or anything, but it would send a very important signal that I guarantee you, number one, Vucic, and number two, the Russian ambassador to Serbia, and number three, Putin himself would be apprised of, and Lavrov would be apprised of because they're so involved in this, and would see. And what would this do? We use this expression in English. You probably know this. The handwriting on the wall. And we use that expression, the handwriting on the wall. And that's what this That's the way you get this dialogue going. That's the way. And that's exactly what we proposed then. And it only makes more sense after the invasion of Russia when we've had this split. So that's my answer to your very good and precise question. Please.
Derit për përgjigjen. Pi marrëm disa komente prej audiencës, mandej nëse ka reflektime prej panelistëve, vazhdojmë. Zoti Hamidi.
Thank you very much to the organizers, Mr. Pitts. Thank you very much to both Ambassador Schmunk and Mr. Joseph for the very insightful comments and responses to questions from here. I just wanted to briefly touch upon a couple of issues with regard to Serbia's position that one of the speakers said Serbia is being seen as becoming likely so. Vučić has been the favorite autocrat of the West, frankly, both European and American. If you look at it, just remember less than a year ago or so, the chancellor, the German chancellor, said she believed, she trusted Vučić. Vučić became the man to be trusted, the favorite one, and including after he had made those comments a few years back in Kosovo when he said Milosevic was a great leader. So you have had the West appeasing him just the way been appeasing, frankly, Putin, as now everyone understands, including the Germans. Now, with regard to the non-recognizers, now, yes, the 5 non-recognizers is an issue. To a degree, the kind of behavior of the recognizers is becoming even more problematic in my view. Why? Yes, there are 22 recognizers and 5 non-recognizers, but if the 5 have the upper hand in the EU's dealings with Kosovo, that means that actually the recognizers, when they speak of their commitment to and wish to see Kosovo become part of the Euro-Atlantic structures that is accede to the Council of Europe, it's paying lip service, if you wish. So we will see what happens tomorrow and see whether the words coming from some of the capitals, not all of them, and we have not heard, for instance, from the Italian government, because it will be in the hands of the Italian government whether they want to put Kosovo's application for the Council of Europe membership tomorrow. So if they don't, that means that most likely the Italian government would fall to this kind of delusional idea that the start of this process will do harm to the dialogue, this long dialogue. Now, for 11 years we've been engaged, Kosovo and Serbia, in this EU